The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
Always happy to introduce our next guest, U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, better known as the SEC, member Hester Peirce, who most recently has made some news in the crypto world by going to Twitter to oppose the news that there have been some 20 new jobs on the regulatory agency's crypto enforcement squad. Commissioner Peirce said the SEC is a regulatory agency with an enforcement division, not an enforcement agency. Joining us now to sort of tease this out a bit further is SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce. Welcome, Hester.
Hi, Emily. It's great to be here.
Great to have you back. So, Commissioner Peirce, let's, as we know, a tweet, speaks volumes, but I'm sure we could tease this out a little bit further. So let's just talk about what is it about this news that caused you to make this statement? I mean, what does this actually mean? So they're adding some new jobs. Is this just kind of like a symbolic action? Like, okay, look, we're taking this seriously. Or do you actually think that these new jobs will lead to much stricter enforcement from the SEC?
Plenty to do on the enforcement in the crypto space. We all know there's plenty of fraud out there. We can spend resources on that and have expenses on that, and I've supported that. What objected to is that we haven't set out a regulatory framework, and so we're cart before the horse. We're getting ready to enforce along all these lines without telling people what those are. And so that was really my reaction. I mean, having an enforcement team that's dedicated to this area is fine, but where's the regulatory team that's dedicated to this area? I've been calling for this for a really long time, and I've yet to see it materialize.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess the question is then, what would these people be doing, right? If the regulation is unclear, but you have 20 new people enforcing this unclear regulation, what exactly would they do every day? I mean, how would this actually play out in reality?
Well, I think we can kind of take the types of enforcement actions that have come out so far, and some of them have been devoted to fraud. But I think if you look at others, they're really devoted to trying to establish lines using enforcement actions to establish those lines. Thinking, for example, the BlockFi settlement. You're trying to establish a regulatory framework through the back door of an enforcement action. Why not have a public conversation with users of crypto lending and providers of crypto lending and what regulatory regime makes sense? Maybe that's an SEC regime. And if it is, we can talk together, but design that in the context of enforcement action. It doesn't make sense.
I wonder what was the catalyst for this. Was that there was this need for more of an enforcement push, or what's the catalyst for adding these jobs? Is it because they do want to have more enforcement on things like BlockFi, other crypto lenders, or are there any other things that they have their eye on? NFTs, for example.
Yeah, well, the press release that announced this expansion of the listed a number of things, including NFTs and stablecoins, and I believe platforms, crypto trading platforms were on well. So I think that the idea is to, again, place emphasis on the fact that we think we have authority in areas, and so people should be conscious of the securities laws when they're in these different activities. Again, I tell people that too, that you should be thinking about the securities laws because the securities laws have broad reach. The way of doing this is not to set up a big enforcement unit without also, and I would argue first, setting up a group of people at the commission who are going to think about the regulation and preferably do that in conjunction with other agencies across the federal government. That makes more sense. And so I don't know why we're doing it in this way, except to sort of send a message that we have the upper hand in these kind of negotiations around the regulation. And that just this isn't about someone getting the upper hand. This is about getting rules on the books that make sense, and allowing people who are wanting to comply with the rules and understand the rules, allowing them to understand what they are so that they can come into compliance, so that we can focus our resources on the people who don't want to come into compliance and who are ripping other people off. I mean, that's where I want to spend the agency's compliance resources. Now, I should say that part of what the new unit is for cyber issues, and we all know that cyber issues are a huge problem across the markets and across different companies, all sorts of companies. And so having dedicated people who have expertise in cyber is, I think it's a good idea. But we tend to emphasize the crypto aspect, and it is done to get leverage in these negotiations around what regulation should be.
Interesting. Commissioner, you mentioned that this expansion of the enforcement will have more of a critical eye on stablecoins. And I do know that the SEC is investigating Terra Luna, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on UST and algorithmic stablecoins.
Well, without speaking to any algorithmic stablecoin in particular, it's a new iteration of stablecoin. There's a lot of experimentation going on in that space. There are a lot of different approaches taken to to how those algorithmic stablecoins would work. And what I want us to do is build an environment in which that experimentation can occur. Now, whether or not that falls within our purview, I think depends on the facts and circumstances. But broadly, I think the federal government should be allowing that experimentation to occur, ensuring that its regulatory objectives of protecting customers, investors, and protecting the integrity of the marketplace and financial stability, you can hit those objectives while nevertheless allowing experimentation. And I think there's a lot of really interesting, there are a lot of interesting projects out there trying different, and that's something that we should certainly allow to continue. And of course, caution people that when you participate in any of this space, you have to be careful and you have to be prepared to lose money, and you have to think about those kinds of things. So we have to, pair the experimentation with also cautionary language.
Yeah, I just want to add, tomorrow Tron is releasing USDD, another algorithmic stablecoin, throwing their hat in the ring, I suppose. And I wonder, and they're offering 30% annual percentage yield. So I wonder, how do you balance innovation with protecting consumers? Well,
I think consumers have to use their skepticism as well, right? When they these things, generally the goal is to allow people to experiment, but make sure that they're disclosing to the people who are purchasing their token or their stablecoin or their NFTs, making sure that their disclosures around what it is that people are getting when they buy these things. So that's the balance. We're not a merit regulator, and in general, the federal government is not a merit regulation. And we're not a set of merit regulators. What we do is we put the information out there and let people make their own decisions.
Commissioner Peirce, I just want to turn to another hot item in the news, and I understand that you can discuss this in your personal capacity, but your personal capacity is still very fascinating. Just turn to Elon Musk just for a moment. I believe we may have spoken about him before, but he's raising a lot of questions because not only is he buying Twitter, but he has shown at least it seems that he has shown the ability to move crypto markets with the power of his tweets, and we've kind of seen this happen again just recently, where Ape token have surged because he basically put a collage of monkeys as his profile picture. Now, this is all kind of funny in theory, but I'm just curious, from an SEC perspective, does this kind of ever cross the line into manipulation? If Elon Musk, for example, he owns some of these digital assets, now he's going to basically own Twitter. I mean, where do you draw the line? This came up with GameStop and Reddit, but I just feel like this conversation is very murky, and I'm just curious if you could help us kind of think through the implications of this kind of thing.
Well, I'm certainly not going to talk about any particular person or any particular promotion. If something is a security, then we can bring a case around manipulation if there is manipulation. But again, the facts and circumstances matter a lot. And so you can look at the case law that the SEC has brought to sort of understand what the parameters are, but applying it requires a real consideration of facts and circumstances. So I certainly can't speak to any particular tweet.
Fair enough. Commissioner, maybe just one more comment, but I'm wondering, over the weekend we heard from Warren Buffett during his Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting. He said that Bitcoin, he wouldn't buy it for $25 out there. He doesn't see any value in it. I'm wondering what your thoughts were upon hearing those comments and whether that spirit is mirrored in the SEC at all.
I mean, that's the beauty of the marketplace. Someone thinks it's not worth anything. Someone thinks it's a lot. People come together in the marketplace and a price results from those differing viewpoints. That's what makes our markets work. And so I favor everyone being able to bring to the marketplace her own opinions and acting on those opinions, and not having a government regulator stand in the way of her acting on her beliefs about the value of a particular asset.